Hello, I'm Anne Varty. I'm a professor in Victorian literature in the Department of English at Royal Holloway, and I'm going to talk today about the ideal husband and the structure of the well-made play. We often think about these four plays by Wilde as being social comedies, of which The Ideal Husband is the last before he wrote the farce of Importance of Being Earnest. But it conforms much more readily to the prevailing 19th century form of theatre, which was the well-made play. The well-made play comes from France. The primary exponent in Wilde's own time of the well-made play in France was a man called Victorien Sardou. And he was prolific, very influential, and earned the name Sardoodledom. This is a term from Bernard Shaw, who despised the well-made play as Sardou wrote it and called it Sardoodledom. The reasons why Shaw rejected the well-made play as a legitimate form of theatre in the 19th century was because it's a very, very conservative form of theatre. And I'm going to look again at why it's a reactionary political form, and also what Wilde does with it. So the well-made play, La Pièce Bien Faite, has a four-part structure: exposition, complication, crisis, and resolution. It's a very, very formulaic form of drama. It's plot-driven. It has to move from one of these movements to the next in a very energetic way. The audience needs to know what's going to happen next. And it was so conventional on the 19th century stage that the audience could decide only to come to the theatre to see the crisis scene. That's scene Act 3 of a standard well-made play. And they would just time there. They would know by clockwork when that crisis scene would begin. They'd arrive at the theatre to watch it and they'd leave when it had finished. So it's a very, very mechanical, formulaic, plot-driven drama. The well-made play also uses or deploys a number of stock characters, and a key stock character is the raisonneur, the reasoner, the person who puts the whole social drama back together again, or the social world which has been challenged in the course of the drama. Now, the reason why it's a very conservative form of theatre is because the aim of the well-made play is to present a social world at the beginning in the exposition, to show how that social world is threatened by an outsider, by some sort of event, something arriving unexpectedly during complication and crisis. And then in the last act, in the resolution or the denouement, to show how that social order is restored. So normally in a formulaic well-made play, the social status quo at the end of the drama is the same as it was at the beginning. And it's the raisonneur's job to put everybody and everything back in their normal order, in their appropriate order. So that is why Shaw considered it to be very reactionary. There is no movement from one social state of being to another. There's no progress. Now, Wilde is using the well-made play. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's writing a very, very tight jigsaw puzzle of a piece. So if we think about what's the exposition, obviously these movements line up with the four acts of the play. And the exposition ends with Robert Chiltern saying, "Oh, put out the lights." So a very tragic echo of Othello. We've had all the backstory. Everything the audience needs to know has been introduced to us during that act. We know about the Argentine Canal scheme. We know about Suez. We know there's a blackmail threat against Chiltern. And we know that he is a man with a past. There's been a lot of talk about the importance of the past and how it can play into the present during that exposition. So the big philosophical themes are introduced in the act, as well as the plot-driven drama. The actual moment of complication is when Mrs. Cheveley arrives at the Chilterns' house to look for her lost diamond brooch. That's the complication. She is now embroiled in a different plot, a plot that she doesn't know about, that she isn't controlling. The rest of that act is really a lot of talk in which just situations are extended, amplified, deepened. The crisis then, Act 3, is, again, it's a lot of talk. Now, Wilde has created he uses a box set for that, and he's basically writing a mini farce. So he has a number of rooms off that set, and of course Goring is receiving unexpected guests and putting them all into these different spaces off stage so that everybody has an opportunity to be overheard and to listen. And of course Goring significantly does not know that the mystery woman in his drawing room is not his best friend's wife, but his ex-fiancée, his ex-lover. The crisis is, how does this farcical situation, how does Goring manage to defuse it and resolve everything? And for the audience, the excitement is in the tension, really, of the villainess is exposed as a complete villainess. She's then trapped in her diamond brooch, which we discover is now a ruby bracelet, and we discover that Goring and Cheveley were lovers, were engaged to be married, and broke it off. It's a very important encounter between the dandy and the new woman in that moment. And then, of course, the denouement, the resolution, is everybody is put back in their social positions. There appears on the surface to be no change. So it would seem that Wilde is writing a very reactionary piece of theatre here. The marriage is restored. It was threatened by an outsider. It's put back together again, and Chiltern resumes his political career. And I think it's an open question to what extent do we think this is a conservative play, and to what extent is it a progressive one. The answer to do with the progressive reading of the play would be that although the external realities are all reconfirmed, the terms on which those relationships are developed and continued have changed. So that Chiltern could say at the beginning, Lady Chiltern could say at the beginning, I never change. By the end, she has changed because she's had to change her view of her husband and her own position within the marriage. And she has to move from her Puritan position of fixed morality to understand that good and evil are more complex things than she had initially believed them to be.